Hello everybody, welcome to Exploring with Cindy and Dan. Today we are in Glacier Bay National Park with the Discovery Princess, so join us in this adventure. Today is day 5 of our 7-day inside passage to Alaska with the ports of call of Juneau, Skagway, Ketchikan, Victoria in British Columbia, Canada, and Glacier Bay National Park. At around 6:45 a.m., we arrived at Barlett Cove in Glacier Bay National Park, where we picked up Jerry, Nate, and Dan, the Glacier Bay Park Rangers, and they were with us throughout our Glacier Bay scenic route. Between 7:45 a.m. and 8 a.m., the Vista Lounge on Deck 7 aft of the ship had the Glacier Bay greetings. It was an introduction and overview of the day at the Glacier Bay National Park given by one of the park rangers. And then from 8 a.m. until noon, they had the park ranger information desk. If you had any questions for the park rangers, you could find them here from 8 to 12. And they also had an Alaskan Geographic Park store inside the Vista Lounge. At 8:30 a.m., Jerry, the park ranger located at the bridge of the ship, made his first announcement on the speakers. Jerry did almost 4 hours of commentary on and off from the bridge, and you can hear him on the open spaces in the ship and also inside your cabin on your TV and inside the World Fresh Marketplace buffet. If you are inside your cabin, tune in by selecting the movies and TV options, then the live TV, and then the bridge cam logo. When we were entering the inside passage, he couldn't broadcast on the outside decks as Alaska has a broadcast sound law that prohibits people to disturb the wildlife. But once we were inside the passage, the broadcast began. As you can see, the weather was not very nice to us that day, but it got better throughout our journey. He was also telling us that we could see mountain goats on the starboard side of the ship at Gloomy Knob. If you bring binoculars, you can really see them, so don't forget to bring them. Those 3 white dots are the mountain goats. On our cruise, we also had a naturalist with us. His name was Michael Mojuleski. He spent 2 years in the Wilderness Island in Alaska, and he also had a documentary of his life in Alaska. He had written 5 books of Alaska and other hobbies, like the ultra marathon. When he's not doing princess cruises in Alaska, he's down in South Africa, in Namibia, doing walking safaris. He did 4 presentations about Alaska on our cruise, so if you have him as your naturalist on your cruise, you have to attend his presentations. They were so interesting and fun. Alaska, The Last Frontier, and North to Alaska were my favorite presentations at the Princess Theater with him. He will make announcements about the wildlife or any other information that we would need almost every day of our cruise. But on our Glacier Day National Park day, the park rangers took over for a few hours, and they did the commentaries from the bridge. So we always have somebody helping us understand Alaska and its amazing wildlife. In this cruise, on our way to Skagway, we were able to see the Aurora Borealis or Northern Lights. Our naturalist advised us that we had a 60% chances to see them, and sure enough, at around 12:45 a.m., the second officer on the bridge saw them and did the announcement throughout the ship and inside our cabins, and we were able to see the Aurora Borealis on the upper decks of the Discovery Princess. They were absolutely stunning. Our naturalist Michael suggested to download for free my Aurora forecast on your phone. It is a great app that will allow us to see if we have any chance to see the Aurora Borealis every day. He also advised us that the best whale watching opportunities on this cruise were Monday before arriving in Juneau at the Stefan Passage from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. On Wednesday after Glacier Bay National Park from 4 to 8 p.m. and on Friday before arrival in Victoria at the Strait of Juan de Fuca from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. And he was right. We were able to see humpback whales. Humpback whales are common sights in the summer of Alaska. The flukes or tails have distinct patterns that make it possible to identify individual whales. One tip he gave us was that when you see flying seagulls on top of the water, you will see whales, so keep your eyes open. He was telling us that an exciting humpback behavior is bubble net feeding, where groups of whales swim upwards while releasing columns of bubbles to trap small fish and krill. Then they open their huge mouths at the surface of the water, and then they take a huge amount of food. The best time to see them in Alaska is late spring from fall, but we have seen them in summer as well. Every time we come to Alaska, we've seen humpback whales. As a fun fact we learned in our cruise, the Earth's most powerful predators were well known as whale killers. Although that term eventually got flipped around to killer whales, orcas are not whales, they are huge dolphins. And another fun fact was that moose like it cold, even at minus 22 degrees Fahrenheit. They are still just fine, because they have lived through even the coldest recorded Alaskan temperature of minus 80 degrees Fahrenheit. While we were taking in the views of the entrance of Glacier Bay, we were able to see a beautiful rainbow. We were very blessed on this cruise because we not only saw multiple beautiful rainbows, especially in the city of Juneau and here at Glacier Bay National Park, but we were able to see the Aurora Borealis, or Northern Lights, on our way to Skagway, and they were amazing, as I mentioned before. A one-in-a-lifetime experience for us. Glacier Bay is a homeland, a wilderness, a national park, and a World Heritage. We were listening to a park ranger talking about the history of Glacier Bay. Captain George Vancouver first set eyes on the small 5-mile inlet that was Glacier Bay back in 1974, and he described it as a sheet of ice as far as the eyes could see. When the now famous naturalist John Muir visited in 1879 with a group of native Tlingit, the ice retreated enough to begin exposing one of the world's most amazing wilderness. There is over 3.2 million acres of forest, inlet, shore, mountain peaks rising over 15,000 feet, and many amazing glaciers here at Glacier Bay National Park. Just 250 years ago, Glacier Bay was all glacier and no bay, a massive river of ice, roughly 100 miles long and thousands of feet deep, occupied the entire bay. But today that glacier is gone, having retreated north, and less than a dozen smaller tidewater glaciers remain. Today Glacier Bay is the product of the Little Ice Age, a geologically recent glacier advance in the northern regions. The Little Ice Age reached its maximum extent about 1750. Some glaciers are retrieving and others are advancing. Now you have to travel at least 65 miles up the bay to view tidewater glaciers, a very different scenery compared to the year of 1750. Glacier Bay has many glaciers, and we were able to admire the Reid Glacier, Lamplugh Glacier, Margerie Glacier, and a little bit of the Johns Hopkins Glacier. According to one of our park rangers, glacier ice appears to be blue because the weight of the glacier pushes most air bubbles out of the ice, making it pure. This pure ice has unique properties, including reflecting the blue colors of the spectrum, and that is why we see them with a blue color. The Margerie Glacier is considered one of Alaska's most photographed glaciers and one of Alaska's most active glacial phase, which is the calving of a glacier. The first time we did an Alaskan cruise, we didn't know what calving was. So one of our park rangers of the ship explained to us that a calving of a glacier is when a big chunk of ice break off at the end of a glacier because the forward motion of a glacier makes the end of it very unstable and also unpredictable. These glaciers can move forward over 5 feet or so a day. Glacier Bay is very, very deep. It is over 1,000 feet deep. It was created by a glacier and filled in with salt water as the glacier retreated. The fjord at Glacier Bay was created. Our park ranger said that the face of Margerie Glacier is always changing, like many other glaciers in Alaska. Recently, this glacier was documented as 1 mile wide, with a face that is about 200 feet above the waterline. The day we were at the Glacier Bay National Park was very foggy almost all morning, and it was also raining. But when we were leaving the park, it cleared out, but we could still appreciate the spectacular Margerie Glacier, and I hope you can imagine how majestic it was. On this cruise, we couldn't get closer to the Johns Hopkins Glacier, but I've seen it in summer before and it is very amazing. Johns Hopkins Glacier is found at the end of the Johns Hopkins Inlet, in the farthest northwest of the Glacier Bay Fjord. It stretches about 1 mile wide and reaches 250 feet high above the waterline. This is Lamplugh Glacier. It is an 8-mile-long glacier here at Glacier Bay National Park. It is a very pretty glacier. This glacier has sustained dramatic changes within Glacier Bay, and it has become very susceptible to ice loss as temperatures rise due to climate change. Another noticeable impact of changing climate is the black blanket of landslide covering Lamplugh Glacier, a few miles from its face. Back in 2015, a massive landslide dropped approximately 120 million metric tons of rock onto the glacier, and this weight of the rock altered the glacier, impacting ice flow. Lamplugh's face is receding by calving in the central and eastern parts of its ice face at rates estimated to be around 50 to 100 feet per year. And this is the last glacier that we saw at Glacier Bay National Park. This is Reid Glacier. It is an 11-mile-long glacier. Reid Glacier spills down from the Brady Icefield, and it was named for Harry Fielding Reid, one of the first scientists to study how glaciers move. This glacier moves slowly enough that expert mountaineers can traverse it to reach the Brady Icefield and peaks of the Fairweather Mountains. The complete history of Glacier Bay National Park is very fascinating, so take a moment to read your brochures and map that was handed to you by your stateroom attendant the night before we arrived at the park. And don't forget to bring your Glacier Bay map to the World Fresh Marketplace Buffet restaurant if you are following the commentary of the park rangers. It is very handy. You can follow the map along with the commentaries, and you will know exactly where you are in the national park. Our park ranger explained to us that in the open ocean the water was a normal light blue color, but at the fjord it's lime blue. The reason for that is that there is a lot of sediments in the ocean. As the glacier moves across land, it grinds down rocks into a fine powder called rock flour. And when the iceberg drafts off the glacier, it deposits that crushed rock into the water. Rock flour or glacier flour consists of fine-grained, silt-sized particles of rock, and it doesn't sink, and it floats at the top of the water, giving the water a murky green color. I found this very interesting to share. Another fun fact we learned on our cruise was that everybody knows an iceberg in the fjords is not very big when we see it in the waters, but we can only see 1/7 of the top of the iceberg. So now imagine how big an iceberg really is. Our park rangers also ask the passengers very important things to remember while in the national park. Like, for example, do not throw anything up overboard, including feeding the wildlife. Take extra care with those loose items, hats, napkins on the outside decks, so they won't blow overboard, and avoid disturbing wildlife. Also, get outside even for a moment on the open decks, because it's completely different to admire the glacier from outside of the ship and see the massive ice wall and maybe hear the incredible sounds when it calls. We left Glacier Bay National Park at around 2:45 in the afternoon, and the Glacier Bay National Park rangers disembarked at the park headquarters at Barlett Cove at the entrance of the park. Around 3 p.m., live commentary from the navigational bridge started with our naturalist Michael Mojuleski. He was telling us that from May until the end of September, which is the Alaska season in Alaska, Alaska had 21 consecutive cruise passengers from over 30 countries and nearly 50 states, and from all the cruise lines including Princess, Royal Caribbean, Disney Cruise Line, Norwegian Cruise Line, and many more cruise lines, there were 1.7 million passengers cruising to Alaska. This is the end of our video. We hope you enjoyed it. Please don't forget to watch our previous videos of the ports of call of Juneau, Ketchikan, and Skagway with the Discovery Princess. And consider subscribing to our channel with the notification bell on so you'll know when we have our next video of another port of call in Alaska. Thank you.